Have you ever wondered, can a lie ignite hope? Can a fraud become a real hero? And most importantly, can humanity continue to believe in goodness, even in its darkest hour? The world on the brink of war. America, trying to heal the wounds of the Great Depression. People unemployed, hopeless, angry. It was precisely in this period that director Frank Capra brought one of cinema's most touching social commentaries to the screen. Meet John Doe, starring Gary Cooper and Barbara Stanwyck. This film wasn't just a story. It was a mirror held up to America's soul, a warning about the fragility of democracy, and perhaps most importantly, a timeless reminder of the power of ordinary people. Anne Mitchell, smart, ambitious, desperate newspaper writer, about to lose her job. Her survival instinct, stronger than her ethical values. Atypically for women of that era, she's trying to stand on her own feet. But all she knows is writing. And now, even that's being taken away. Long John Willoughby, a former baseball player, career ended by an injured arm. Now homeless, jobless, hopeless. But there's still pride within him, still honor. Even while fighting hunger and cold, he refuses to bow to anyone. D.B. Norton, rich, powerful, dangerous, newspaper magnate with secret political ambitions. A man who enjoys playing people like puppets, planning to use democracy for his own gains. But his most dangerous aspect, doing it under the guise of patriotism. The Colonel, John's road companion, an old vagrant who chose to live outside the system. A wise man who can see the traps of modern life. But nobody listens to him. Because who listens to a vagrant's words? Everything started with a lie. Anne Mitchell left her boss's office, face flushed, hands trembling. She'd been fired. The newspaper she'd given years to had thrown her onto the street. They'd given her one day to write her final column. One day. And Anne decided to take revenge. She sat at her typewriter. As keys danced under her fingers, her anger transformed into words. She wrote a fake letter signed John Doe. This imaginary man complained about society's rot, people's selfishness, politicians' lies, the rich's greed, and at the letter's end, a bombshell announcement. On Christmas Eve, he would jump from the top of City Hall, in protest, to awaken humanity. When the newspaper was printed the next morning, nobody could predict what would explode. The city rose up. Thousands of letters poured into the newspaper, some supporting John Doe, some trying to dissuade him, some saying they thought like him. Anne's bosses panicked. This fake letter had turned into a real phenomenon, and now they needed to find a John Doe, a real person, someone to play the role. At exactly this moment, Long John Willoughby appeared at the door, hungry, wretched, desperate. He'd come to the newspaper looking for work. The moment Anne saw him, she knew. Here was her John Doe, tall, handsome, innocent-faced, a broken symbol of the American dream, a perfect puppet. John was made an offer. Monthly money, food, shelter. In return, he just had to play John Doe. John hesitated. The Colonel warned him. This was a trap, but hunger defeated pride. The contract was signed, and the John Doe movement was born. Anne began writing speeches for John. Hopeful, sincere speeches, reflecting the common man's voice, about neighborliness, helping each other, kindness. John began speaking on the radio, and the miracle happened. People listened, believed, took action. John Doe clubs began forming across the country, people helping each other, talking to neighbors, remembering what they'd forgotten. But there was something they didn't know. D.B. Norton's secret plans. He planned to use this movement for his own political career, dreamed of becoming leader of a fascist movement. And John Doe was his Trojan horse. But John was no longer just a puppet. He'd seen hope in people's eyes, felt the calluses on their hands, listened to their stories. And slowly, the truth began growing within the lie. John was really becoming John Doe. But what he didn't know, this decision would change his life forever. The big convention night arrived. Rain whipped the stadium roof. 20,000 people had gathered to listen to John Doe, to hear the voice of hope. But backstage, a storm was brewing. Norton had revealed his plan to John. Tonight, John would announce a new political party, a party with Norton as presidential candidate. John refused. He couldn't deceive these people, couldn't use their hope as a tool for dirty politics. Norton laughed. He had the contract John signed, every speech transcript, proof of every lie. When John went on stage, Norton's men were at the microphones. He began to speak, but the words knotted in his throat. Thousands of pairs of eyes looked at him, with hope, with faith, with love. And John decided to tell the truth. Just as he was about to speak, Norton's men intervened, cut the microphones, and Norton came on stage. He announced to the crowd that John was a fraud, showed the contract, proved the letters were fake. The crowd froze. Then anger exploded. They attacked John, booed him, spat at him. Their hope was broken, their faith destroyed. John looked at Anne, regret in her eyes. But it was too late. The crowd dispersed, in the rain, with disappointment. The John Doe movement was dead. But something had awakened in John. Maybe this movement that started as fake had turned into something real, belief in people's goodness. And John made a decision. Christmas Eve, snow falling, the roof of City Hall. John was there. He would really jump, make the fake letters promise real. Maybe this way he could restore people's faith. Maybe his death would be more meaningful than his life. He approached the edge of the roof. Below, the city sparkled, Christmas bells ringing. Just as he was about to jump, he heard voices. Anne came running, crying, pleading. Others followed behind her. John Doe Club members, ordinary people. Bert Hansen stepped forward, the man who listened to John's first speech, the man who hadn't spoken to his neighbor for years, had reconciled thanks to John. And now he told John something. The movement wasn't dead. People still believed. They hadn't fallen for Norton's lies. Because what John said was true. Fake or real. Kindness was real. Neighborliness was real. Hope was real. And these didn't need John Doe. There was a John Doe inside every person. John began to cry, understanding, for the first time, the movement was bigger than him. The message more important than the messenger. Anne grasped John's hand, led him away from the roof. Snow continued falling, but it wasn't cold anymore, because below, in the city, people were still gathering in John Doe clubs, celebrating Christmas together, helping their neighbors. Norton had lost, because you couldn't defeat goodness, couldn't kill hope. Even in humanity's darkest moment, lighting a candle was stronger than cursing. When the film premiered in 1941, it deeply affected America. Months before Pearl Harbor, Capra, seeing fascism's rise, had warned democracy was fragile. Demagogues always lurked. But hope always existed too. For me, Meet John Doe isn't just a film. It's one of the purest portraits of human nature. What affects me most? John's transformation. Initially just a man acting for money, but ultimately, someone who truly believes in that role. Maybe we're all like this. Initially we act the good person role, The brave role, the hopeful role. But over time, those roles stick to us, and we become those roles. Do you think John Doe deserved forgiveness? He lied, deceived people, but ultimately told the truth, was ready to pay the price. If this film were made today, would it have the same impact? In the social media age, among fake news, is John Doe's message still valid? I think yes, maybe more valid than ever. Because while technology changes, the human heart remains the same. We still need hope, still need each other. If you've watched this classic film, share your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't, definitely watch it. And remember, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because every week we'll discover another classic film together. Classic films are mirrors not just of the past, but of our hearts. Frank Capra's genius requires understanding the spirit of the times. 1941, America stood at the precipice. Economic crisis, social unrest, approaching war. People sought easy solutions, strong leaders, simple answers. This was the danger Capra warned against. The Norton character wasn't coincidence. He was a portrait of real demagogues of the era. Radio preachers like Father Coughlin, populist politicians like Huey Long, even European dictators, all used the same tactic, exploiting ordinary people's anger. But Capra didn't just warn, he gave hope too. John Doe clubs inspired a real movement. After the film's release, similar clubs formed across America. People took the film's message seriously. Gary Cooper's performance was magnificent, one of the era's biggest stars. But in this role, he forgot his stardom, became an ordinary man, fragile, doubtful, human. Barbara Stanwyck gave one of her career's best performances. Anne Mitchell wasn't a simple villain. She was a woman trying to survive. And by film's end, she too transformed, understood love's power. Capra's direction, felt in every frame, the crowd scenes, thousands of people's hope and anger, the close-ups, hesitation on John's face, regret in Anne's eyes, and that final scene, the snowy roof, Christmas bells, the edge of suicide, and hope's birth, one of cinema history's most powerful endings. The film wasn't box office successful, found too dark, too political, but time vindicated Capra. Today Meet John Doe stands among American cinema's classics, and its message remains current, perhaps more current than ever, because in our age, fake news, manipulation, demagoguery, all recall John Doe's story. But the film reminds us of something else. Goodness is power, ordinary people's value, and hope's immortality.